Hello folks, my name is Bonasaki from the Master Lab Systems. Today we'll be looking at Python FastAPI plus CICD with GitHub Actions. Basically we'll be integrating a FastAPI project with CICD using GitHub Actions or with GitHub Actions using CICD. Okay, so let's look at the introduction for CICD. Basically, what is CI? Let's start with the abbreviation of CI. So CI stands for Continuous Integration. Basically, it means it's an automatically test and a build stage or a build configuration for your code when changes are being pushed. So this means automatically when you're on your code or on your repository, when you create a push or when you push a change up to your repository manager, so what happens is that automatically your build or your test stage start or your pipeline starts to trigger your build, your test, and your build stage automatically. Again, looking at now CD. So what is CD? So CD stands for continuous deployment or delivery. Also, it automatically deploys a code to production or staging wherever environment it can be, either dev. So the two works hand in hand because of the first abbreviation, which is CI, the continuous integration. Basically, it's both of those can be in the same file. However, it just depends on the stages itself. So in your CI file, you will have your test and your build stage in your CI file, and again you can also both again have your CD stages, which is your deploy stage, depending on your configuration. Again, we'll be looking at that in a minute in the actual code. So let's look at the benefits for a CICD. So a CICD provides a faster development cycles. Also, it gives you an early detection of those bugs and produces a good code quality. Basically, this means that when you have a bug in your code, automatically your CI or your test stage in your build stage are automatically going to detect those. Basically, if your test stage runs, it will test, runs. If it fails, automatically the whole pipeline will fail, and automatically you as the developer get notified and you have to fix your bugs. Basically, that's what it means for an early detection of bugs. Again, for faster development cycles, this basically means that at the same time we work remotely or we make some commits, different commits, we can automatically release this faster, and we can at that time, at the stage, or our code automatically gets produced earlier. Yes. Okay, so let's again look at why GitHub Actions. So again, GitHub Actions provides a built-in support since it's already in GitHub. So if your project or your repository is in GitHub, you can automatically be able to leverage GitHub Actions. Also, it is easy to configure YAML workflows since GitHub Actions workflows are written in YAML. So automatically it gets easier to configure those because of it also provides some code templates. Also, it integrates with many cloud services, free for public repositories. Okay, so let's look at how we can create our first workflow using GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions workflow requires a specific folder in your project, meaning you have to create a directory called .github. Inside that, you create another folder called workflows, and then inside that folder workflow, that's when now you create your actual CI file. So again, we will be looking at that on how we can create those and also using the templates provided by GitHub Actions in GitHub. So again, going further, as I said, the two work together, and also it works hand in hand, which is the CI and the CD. They both work in hand in hand. So the one is for continuous integration, meaning as we keep on developing, automatically you can test and build, meaning the integration is easily catered there. Same goes for CI. As we keep on integrating more services or more features, we can automatically again continue to deliver or continue to deploy. So again, that's the cycle. So the two works definitely hand in hand. Okay. So again, let's look at that. So we can also use SCP, which is the secure copy protocol, or in rsync to deploy to a remote server. It can definitely use that, meaning you can just add a stage for that. Again, it can deploy to platforms like Heroku, AWS, or Render, or Railway. You just need to add a deployment stage in your CI file. Again, you can trigger Docker builds, Docker pushes to Docker help, or whatever repository manager you are using, or whichever could be Nexus repository. You just need to add a stage for that. Okay. So okay, summary and the next steps. Again, CICD improves dev speed and quality. Again, GitHub Actions makes automation easy. FastAPI, of course, it's very perfect for modern web APIs. So at this stage, we'll essentially be using FastAPI for our project. Okay, so let's look at that in a code on how we can create a basic workflow that does a test, or that does a CI stage, meaning a test and build. Okay, so what I have here, basically, I'm just gonna close this for now. So what I have here, basically, it's one of my older repos. Basically, this is the repo. So what do we need? It's this file, which is the .github. Inside that, we have again the workflows, which is one of our workflow, or our workflow. Yes, of course. Inside that workflow, that's when now we have our first, which is our CI file. So again, this is our CI file. Again, I will show you how we can get a template for this in GitHub Actions. So let's say we haven't created this at all. So this is what we need, of course. So in your project, so again, my project, yes, in my project. So if we go to that, go to my repos, okay. So for example, if I start on my repos, so maybe let's duplicate the tab. So let's say I have take one of my repositories and say I wanted to create, okay, let's take this one for instance. Say you wanted to create a pipeline for this repo. What we can do, you go to your actions, from here on actions. So again, this is where now you need to create your templates. Or again, instead of using this one, it's the repo, because of this project has got a front end and a back end, so it's not gonna be a very good use to use it. Okay, so let's take this one again, which is this one. So let's say you have this repo, and then you needed to create your first GitHub workflow. So you come in here again. We already have a workflow running for this one, but of course we'll test it and also create a new workflow. So we'll create a workflow, which is that one you see there. Again, as you can see now, it says create, it says new workflow. So currently this workflows, or these runs are for this workflow, which is the one that I'm already having in the application itself, or in the code side. So those are the runs are for this workflow. So again, so if now we needed to create a new one, or let's say we wanted to create a very new workflow from scratch, so we just click here, new workflow. So again, depending on your project, if you're using Java, you can just use a workflow for Java. But again, this is for a Python project, so we need to use a Python workflow, of course. Again, this is just a basic standard Python project. So what I'll just do, I'll just normally select this one, which is the Python applications workflow. So if I click this one, click configure, you should see a template. Automatically, if you click configure, this is the template. It comes to your project. So again, this is the template that you need to be using, depending on again your project or on your repository. So let's look at this template. So this template, it contains what? Again, a standard name, which is what we have already selected, which is standard Python application. And it has it has the basic configuration. Basically what this means, which is on push, again on the main branch, on the push to main branch, this is where it needs to run. Again, on push, on a pull request which goes to main branch, also runs this workflow. Okay, same goes. So what we have, okay, so let's first look at the jobs and the build. Okay, again, it runs on using, which is the server or the runner that it's using. Of course, it's using Linux Ubuntu. So what it has is the first stages. So again, it first check out the project again, set up Python 3.10, which is the version that it needs to use. As you can see, again, uses Python, again, version 3.10. So from there, it installs, attempts to install the project dependencies, which is that from that, it does the linting, checks the lints. If no linting error, that's all. So again, if you are happy with this, you can just commit. But again, at the same time, once you have committed it, it means you still can be able to modify it or to update, make changes to it, depending on your project configuration, of course. Okay, so again, I'm not gonna commit this because I already have one which is in my code. So I'm just gonna explain that one in the code. But again, this is the step. This is the step, or this is how you can create a new workflow using GitHub Actions. Okay, so let's cancel that. Yes, discard. Okay, so let's go to what. So again, this is what you are going to see once you have created or when you have committed that change. You are going to see a folder called .github/workflows. Inside that, it's an actual workflow file or an actual CI file. So again, let's go to my code so I can show you how this runs when you are making your changes to your project, and again, when you have a fully configured workflow. So again, you have to change your name to your project, name. This is what you can see. Again, I've already explained that the permission, of course, to read that needs to be able to read the contents of the file of the project. Again, it runs that's the runner itself. So again, on my side, I've made a little modification. Since my project it uses PowerA3 instead of pip as the dependency manager or as the builder tool. So again, it's gonna be slightly different than what you would see on the actual template provided. So again, we have some steps here. So again, what it needs to check out the code. Once it checks out the code, it needs to, again, the name, set up Python 3.10. Again, as I've already explained, it uses Python assigns that to, which is the version of Python, which is 3.10 for my project. Again, since I'm using PowerA3, so I have to first have a stage or a step to install PowerA3. Of course, at that, install PowerA3, provide the PowerA3 URL, creates a path to it. Again, it's pretty standard. So from there, once it does the PowerA3 installation, it does the installation of the dependencies of the project, again using the PowerA3 install command. That's what you just need to do if you are using PowerA3 in your project, or if you're using pip, of course it will be different, either pip install -r requirements or txt. But again, if you are using pip, but this time we're using PowerA3, so in PowerA3 you just simply do a PowerA3 install to unpack the dependencies. So from there, we run another step, which is the lint using Flake 8. Again, it runs the lint, checks all the linting. If everything is fine, the project, again, nothing is broken, it does that again. So finally it runs the test of the project. So again, if you have a test directory, it will run those tests in your project, which you will be seeing again in a minute. So this is nothing basically. This is basically a CI at this stage, because of we are not delivering anything or we are not deploying anything. So again, if you wanted to add a seed steps or a seed stage, you will be able to add that again, since I said the two work hand in hand. So again, I'm just gonna explain a little bit of how we will add a seed stages, but again, it goes back again to your configuration of your project. Since at this stage we just want to run the test for the project and not to deploy anything. So if, for instance, we wanted to do a deployment, so again, I have a build stage. So that should, but I'm not going to commit this again. I'm just going to explain it. So let's say again we wanted this project to do a build of a Docker file and perhaps push it to Docker Hub for that, which is a CD this time, not a CI. So again, once the CI stage is run, so now we then now do the CD stage, which is at this stage we would say a CD would start here. So CD stages. So let's look at what we would have to add for this repo for CD stages, which is for continuous delivery or deployment stages. So again, we can make the build stage to depend on test, so that if ever the test stage is failed for some reason, either test errors or whatever errors it occurs, so we just skip the whole build stage. So that's why we add there the needs test. So meaning this job or this stage is build, it depends on test. If test fails, then it will just skip this build stage. However, it will only execute when test passes. Okay, so moving on. So this is what we want to do again for a CD stage. So we check out the code. Again, look at that. So now it will attempts to log into Docker Hub using the Docker login. Again, if you have your secrets, you know your username and password, you can just simply provide those again. So from checking out the code, log into Docker Hub again, attempts to do what? If you have a Docker file in a project, let's say your project uses a Docker file to build Docker images, again, you can also add that so that it can be triggered automatically on when your CD stage starts to run. It can automatically keep on producing your Docker images. Okay, so if you have that in there now, so again, what it does, that builds a Docker image, pushes that Docker image to your Docker repository, or to your repository manager. It could be Docker Hub, or as I said, either Nexus or JFrog, depending on what you are using. Again, you can extend the CI file depending again on your project specifications or your configurations. So again, as I said, I'm not going to commit to this because of it's not yet completed. So again, I don't really need it at this stage. So what I will just do, I'm just gonna unhash it, okay, hash it back to that. Okay, so now let's push this change and test out and look at it when it runs the whole of the test stages. Okay, so okay, let's go to terminal. Okay, so if we do again, let's say to a git add dot, so a git commit -m, which is what, let's say, trigger pipeline. So that's my commit message, and commit that. Let's do a git push to push this new change. So once it pushes that, we should be able to follow it. Okay, so okay, let's go to our browser. So let's go to our actions. So again, as you can see, this is this workflow that I'm talking about, which is running. So currently, as you can see, this is the new commit I just made. Again, as you can see, it's now already, it's running. So if we go to it, try to open it up. So this is what it runs. As you can see, it runs test, meaning that's the test stages. So now it's attempting to run those test stages. Okay, you can see everything has already finished. So let's do a back, then you can probably see. So as you can see, it took 31 seconds because the project is still small. So again, as you can see, this is how we can create a full functioning GitHub workflow. Again, this is the commit we just made. So as you can see, the pipeline ran successfully fine. Produced again. It ran successfully fine. So again, if we look at it, these are the stages it runs. So we did the checkout code, set up Python 10, install poetry dependencies or project dependencies, and then it does the linting using Flake8. It runs the PyTest. As you can see, those are tests in the project, so it's attempting to run those tests again. It produces some test report, so it does that. It runs the test in the project, so all the tests successfully passed. Say instance the test had failed, definitely it was gonna fail. The whole pipeline was gonna fail. However, in this case, all the tests are successfully passing, hence it could pass. So again, it does that and then it completes the job. Okay folks, that's how we can fully create a fully functioning GitHub workflow. I think I will have to end here for this demo. Again, as I said, again, on the next steps, it's possible that we can extend the pipeline file if we want to. Let's say you wanted to add a new stage to deploy to Heroku, you can just simply add it so that automatically when it pushes your code, it does your test stage and then it attempts to deploy or using your deploy stages. Again folks, that's all I have for this stage. If you have any comment or you like this video, please comment in the comment section. I'll answer your comments. Again, if you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Appreciate it. Thanks folks. We'll be seeing you next. Cheers, bye.